Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking carefully at a claim that circulated widely online and in parts of the media. That Ukraine waited for a Russian general to board a so-called shadow ship and then triggered a 2,000-kilometer ambush. The story is striking, but it also raises serious questions about what is confirmed, what is speculation, and what it tells us about the current phase of the war. This video is not about repeating rumors or celebrating attacks. It is about unpacking what is known, what is not known, and how information warfare, logistics, intelligence, and long-range strikes are reshaping the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We will move step by step. First, what people mean by a shadow ship. Second, how Russian military logistics actually work. Third, how Ukraine conducts long-range targeting. And finally, what this particular story tells us about the fog of war and the battle for narratives. Let's begin with the phrase that triggered so much attention, shadow ship. In recent years, the term shadow fleet has been used to describe vessels that operate outside the usual transparency of international shipping. These ships often change flags, owners, and routes to avoid sanctions, inspections, or tracking. Since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Russia has relied more heavily on such practices to export oil, move sensitive cargo, and sometimes transport military-related equipment. These ships are not invisible. They still appear on satellite imagery, port records, insurance databases, and sometimes on public ship tracking services. But they are harder to monitor because their data is incomplete, misleading, or intentionally obscured. When people say shadow ship, in this context, they usually mean a vessel that is not openly acknowledged as part of a state's military or official logistics chain, but which may still be moving items of strategic importance. There is, however, no public evidence that Russia uses these ships to transport senior generals into combat zones. Russian generals typically travel by military aircraft, helicopters, or protected ground convoys, especially near the front lines. See, transport for high-ranking officers would be slow, visible, and risky. So already, the core of the viral claim that a Russian general secretly boarded a shadow ship for operational travel is questionable. Now let's look at the second part of the claim, that Ukraine waited for this general to board and then triggered a 2,000-kilometer ambush. Ukraine has developed significant long-range strike capability since 2022. This includes drones, modified missiles, and intelligence sharing with partners. Ukraine has used these tools to hit Russian airbases, oil refineries, ammunition depots, and command centers far behind the front lines. Some of these strikes have reached distances close to or exceeding 1,000 kilometers. That is a major development in modern warfare, especially for a country under invasion and without a large navy or air force compared to Russia. But even with these capabilities, the idea of a precisely timed ambush, triggered by the boarding of a specific individual on a specific ship at extreme distance, would require extremely detailed, real-time intelligence and confirmation. That kind of intelligence is rare, sensitive, and usually not disclosed publicly. Governments do not normally announce that they targeted or killed specific individuals, unless it is politically useful and strategically safe to do so. In Ukraine's case, officials tend to confirm strikes on facilities, infrastructure, or military units, but they are cautious about naming individuals, especially senior Russian officers, unless there is overwhelming evidence. As of now, there is no verified, independent confirmation from Ukrainian officials, Russian officials, or credible international media that a Russian general was targeted or killed in such a way. So, what likely happened? It is more plausible that a long-range Ukrainian strike hit a military-related target, perhaps a port facility, fuel depot, shipyard, or logistics hub, and that online speculation later added the dramatic detail of a general and a shadow ship to the story. This is a pattern we have seen many times in this war. A strike occurs, It is confirmed that something burned or exploded. Satellite images show damage. Then, within hours or days, social media accounts and some outlets attach names, ranks, and dramatic narratives to the event, often without evidence. These stories spread quickly because they are emotionally satisfying, they offer a sense of moral clarity, and they appear to show cleverness or revenge. But they often overshoot what can be responsibly claimed. This is not a criticism of Ukraine or its supporters. It is a feature of modern information warfare. Every side wants its actions to look decisive, intelligent, and just. Every side wants the other to look incompetent, careless, or corrupt. Now let's step back and look at the larger strategic picture. Ukraine's long-range strike campaign is not about individuals. It is about systems. It is designed to stretch Russian air defenses, raise the cost of the war for Russia, and force Moscow to spend more resources protecting rear areas that were once considered safe. Striking oil refineries affects fuel supply. Striking ammunition depots affects artillery fire. Striking airbases affects bombing runs. Striking ports affects exports and logistics. This is a rational military strategy. Degrade the opponent's capacity to sustain war rather than trying to chase specific people. At the same time, Russia is also conducting its own long-range strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure, energy systems, and cities. The conflict has increasingly become one of mutual deep strike capability, even if the scale and resources on each side are very different. This is why stories like the shadow ship ambush gain attention. They seem to offer a clear moment in an otherwise complex and grinding conflict. But the reality is more slow, technical, and often more tragic. Most of what happens in this war is not cinematic. It is logistics, maintenance, repairs, intelligence collection, air defense alerts, evacuation, and reconstruction. Now, let's consider why a story like this might be attractive to people. First, it offers a sense of precision, a clever, surgical action that avoids mass casualties. Second, it suggests accountability, that senior figures are not immune, that decisions have consequences. Third, it offers a narrative of competence on one side and carelessness on the other. These are emotionally powerful ideas, especially in a war that has caused so much destruction and suffering. But journalism has a responsibility to separate what we want to be true from what we can show to be true. So far, there is no open-source evidence of a Russian general boarding a shadow ship, nor of a strike timed specifically to that event, nor of a confirmed death matching that description. That does not mean nothing happened. It means we should be careful. Now, let's talk briefly about the human dimension. Behind every story like this are people. Sailors, dock workers, drivers, technicians, families, and civilians living near ports and bases. When a strike hits a facility, it is not just a dot on a map. It is an explosion that shakes buildings, sets off alarms, sends emergency crews into action, and puts lives at risk. The same is true when Russia strikes Ukrainian cities or infrastructure. These are not abstract moves on a chessboard. They are real events with real consequences. This is why precision, verification, and restraint in reporting matter. They are not about protecting one side or the other. They are about respecting the reality of war and the people who live through it. So what can we responsibly conclude? We can say that Ukraine has developed the ability to strike far behind Russian lines, including targets hundreds or even more than 1,000 kilometers away. We can say that Russia uses complex and sometimes opaque logistics networks, including ships and companies that are not fully transparent, partly to avoid sanctions and partly to manage wartime supply. We can say that information about strikes is often incomplete, contested, or deliberately shaped by both sides. And we can say that dramatic claims about specific individuals and cinematic ambushes should be treated with caution unless confirmed by multiple independent sources. This does not make the war less serious or less significant. It makes it more real. It reminds us that modern war is fought not only with weapons, but with data, images, narratives, and attention. As viewers, readers, and citizens, our role is not to consume stories that make us feel good or righteous, but to understand what is happening as clearly as possible. The conflict in Ukraine is reshaping European security, global energy markets, international law, and the meaning of sovereignty and borders in the 21st century. It deserves careful, sober attention. So when you see a headline like Ukraine waited for Russian general to onboard shadow ship, then triggered a 2,000 km ambush, pause. Ask who is saying this, what evidence is offered, who confirms it, who benefits from this version of the story. That pause is not cynicism, it is responsibility. And it is the only way to stay grounded in a time when war is not only fought with missiles and drones, but with words and images that travel faster than any weapon ever could. If you found this analysis useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more war updates and global analysis.